All right, so we are back, and Misfits 16 was this week. That's right, 16 times Misfits has put on a card, and 16 times we've gotten to see influencer boxing in the last 2 years. It's been quite a ride, but this latest installment was a bit of a ride, no pun intended, bumpy one you could say, because it had its ups and it had its downs. Let's talk about it all. Misfits 16, what happened? And the biggest question, honestly, for me is, where do we go from here? Breakdown, let's go. All right, so like I said, Misfits 16 this weekend started off with the OnlyFans girl. I mean, let's be honest, the OnlyFans slash, you're going to have to bleep this word, star girls, as Amber Fields had her ass out at the weigh-ins. Literally, she didn't have any clothes on. Amber did not have any clothes on. They were painted on contortions of her body. Then W.A.D.E came out and rocked her body, not in a way that you'd find on one of their pages, but in the ring, she was throwing ones and twos, threes and fours. There was pretty much nothing Amber Fields could do about it. And while no one was a great boxer in this fight, W.A.D.E looked, for somebody that had never done it, at least not in a professional setting or any sort of exhibition setting that I know of. Trust me, I've done a lot of research. Leah looked pretty decent, you know, for, again, a very, very, very new to boxing person. She was able to throw punches, and she was aggressive, and she got the win. Stoppage. It was not in any way, shape, or form difficult for her. It was one-way traffic. Amber, love you, girl. I'll see you over at MVP, but for this one, just did not go her way. Then we had Lil Cray Cray versus Ace Musa in a split decision that went to Lil Cray Cray. This was a fun fight. Now, mind you, I was, during my live stream, peeking at fights at this point because the USA gold medal game was on, and let's be honest, go USA. It means more over here. We're Olympic champions, gold medal count, tied for first. We have the best athletes on the planet. Cry in the comments. But Lil Cray Cray and Ace Musa was a fun fight. This was a late notice fight. Ace Musa was supposed to fight W.A.D.E Sharks, and W.A.D.E got hurt. Apparently he broke his leg in some fashion, or hairline fracture. Don't even know how that happens. But Lil Cray Cray now gets a shot again in the tournament, I guess. It's a lot of back and forth stuff. No one can really keep up with this stuff. But Lil Cray Cray wins. Tough fight. Close fight. Ace looked better than I thought he would, but Lil Cray Cray is just pretty darn good for the influencer boxing scene. Moving on. Jahan Ingram versus Ryan Schwartzberg, a.k.a. Joe Dierte, a.k.a. Larry the Cable Guy's illegitimate son. He gave Jahan Ingram a tougher fight than I think a lot of people imagine. Listen, Jahan, big-time signee to Misfits. Misfits making their way into the pro boxing game, I think, with the signing of Jahan Ingram, with the signing of Amir Anderson. Things to keep an eye on there, but Jahan did not put in his best performance. And regardless of what was said on commentary, and trust me, I know when commentary is calling a fight or propping up a fighter, and this was the latter of the two, he did not have a great performance. In fact, Ryan exposed a lot of things in the young Jahan Ingram that maybe you didn't know he had issues with to this point. And it wasn't a bad thing for Jahan. He got the win, unanimous decision, awesome. But this was a tough fight for him. And it wasn't by any means, even though he won a unanimous decision, and I saw there were some wide scorecards there, this was not an easy fight. It was not his greatest performance, but it's a good thing for a young fighter to have. In fact, I think he'll be a better fighter because of it. And again, if Misfits is going to introduce more pro fighters to their roster, this is good to have, where he has a bit of a test early in his career. I think it's best for all boxers to have some early tests in their career, not when you're 10-0 or when you're 15-0 or you're 20-0 in your first real fight. Jahan Ingram got a scrap on his hands last Saturday, and Ryan Schwartzberg came to fight. He was a live dog, so even though Jahan did not have his greatest performance, he looked a little sloppy at moments, looked like he was taking too many punches for a guy in his position and his skill level. I think it was good for him, and I think he'll be a better fighter for it. We'll see what they do with him, and then we'll talk about Amir Anderson in a second. It's going to be an interesting thing how Misfits tries to implement these pro boxers and what exactly they're trying to do. Because right now it feels, we'll say, misplaced on Misfits, but to be fair, this is a promotion that does provide you a little bit of everything in some sort of boxing context, right? You do have now pros on their roster. You have influencers on their roster. You have people that are kind of the in-between where they probably could go pro. And I don't know what level they would be, but they would be better than your influencers. You have MMA fighters that have come over and started boxing as well, and you saw a lot of that on this card. And speaking of those guys that are influencers, but maybe not really influencing people other than the fact that they're on a Misfits card, but they're really good talents in a boxing ring. The next fight was W.A.D.E Gang TV and Argentinian King in the Misfits 135-pound tournament. Again, like I said, you get a lot of stuff from Misfits, while this card, and we'll talk about it from top to bottom in a second, was not the most eye-popping card. In fact, it was probably one of their least heavy name cards they've had. And also it was done in the United States in Miami at about 2 p.m. So I'm not sure how their viewership looked. And also I'm pretty sure there was like 3 or 4 people that illegally streamed it on the internet at one time. Not me, by the way. You know, so again, I don't know how that affected their numbers, but I would assume this was not one of their better viewed cards and probably honestly was toward the bottom end of their viewership. But again, I don't know those things. That's just what I gathered from the attendance in person and the amount of people streaming it illegally. But listen, W.A.D.E Gang TV versus Argentinian King was a fun fight. W.A.D.E Gang showed he's probably one of, if not the highest level guy in the tournament right now. You know, you have W.A.D.E Gang, you have my guy Joey Knight. That one's going to be a fun fight when they do it. But Argentinian King had his moments. You know, he was throwing some shots. It was more just, you know, single shots to the volume of W.A.D.E. The offense to defense, defense to offense transition from W.A.D.E Gang. And again, he's just too smooth for a lot of the guys in this tournament. Fun fight. W.A.D.E Gang wins. Then we go to Amir Anderson, the cash man. He was fighting Keontae Davis, I think was the guy's name. And Keontae Davis was a tough dude. Shredded up to the gills, had all the muscles, had all of the vascularity that you'd want out of a bodybuilder in Miami, but maybe not a boxer. Because when he stepped into the ring, quite frankly, I know he's been in the ring 6 times before and he's lost 5 of those fights, but it didn't look like he had boxed on any sort of professional level ever. Looked like a pure brawler, and Amir Anderson did exactly what he should have done to him. Toyed with him for a little bit, showed flashes of real talent and solid fundamentals. And then eventually, when it came time, he stopped Keontae Davis pretty easily. And yeah, good debut for Amir Anderson. Again, he's much like Jahan Ingram for them. It's going to be interesting to see what it is they want to do with them, how they plan to build them, because again, these aren't influencers. Jahan Ingram, Amir Anderson, they don't have the, I wouldn't say capability, but they don't have the expertise or the following in the influencer scene as it is right now. So they're going to have to be built by Misfits. And quite frankly, if you look at Misfits, there haven't been a lot of fighters that have been built by them as it sits right now. But Cashman, good debut, as his first win as a pro. And again, I don't mind him fighting on Misfits because they do have a bit of everything there, and you know, it's a good way to get your name out there. Then you had Anthony Taylor versus Samuel Erickson, aka the guy I thought was named Eric Samuelson for about every single time I've ever seen him. He has karate combat experience. He has a lot of following on Instagram, I'm pretty sure. And honestly, I thought coming into this, all right, well, you know, we'll get the Anthony Taylor special, the straight right hand, the backhand lead to the clinch, to the, you know, separation, and do-si-do around the world we go. Anthony Taylor looked really good in this fight compared to what you've seen from him in other influencer boxing matches. Now, is this to say that Anthony Taylor's going to look that way against KSI? Had they fought, had this whole August 31st 2v1 match gone on, would he have looked the same there as he had here? I don't know. In fact, I don't think that would have been a great idea for Anthony Taylor to fight the way he fought here versus a KSI, because there's a lot of openings and a lot of places to counter. But I will say in this fight, he looked great. He was throwing his hands. He wasn't looking to clinch. He was throwing big time punches, hooks, right hands, keeping great distance, jab, right hand hooks. And he was just forward pressure, but without clinching, just being patient on his jab and on his toes, looking to continue feints and then hooks over the top. And then his right hand was landing. And after a good combination of just volume, pressure, pace, and finally some power shots from Anthony Taylor that we have been dying to see, he stopped Samuel Erickson. That was a huge thing. Like, I couldn't believe he actually stopped him. He did it in the second round. This was a statement win for Anthony Taylor. Now, again, Anthony Taylor sits in a very weird spot on Misfits. He doesn't make up the influencer side. He doesn't make up the pro boxing side. He doesn't make up the prospect side. He makes up the crossover side, right? A former MMA fighter that does have a bit of ability on the mic. He will, you know, get in a verbal back and forth. He's entertaining to some people. He has done a very good job of putting his name out there for the world to see. He's taken opportunities. He said yes to a lot of things, a very much so company man, a guy that will do and say the things that are going to put him in the best position possible. He's going to take fights. He's going to be there and say yes. I attribute him to a Donald Cerrone type of fighter for Misfits. Now, again, I'm not saying he's the same skill level as Donald Cerrone. I shouldn't have to clarify those things. My point is, he will be there. He will say yes. I think he even said yes to sparring KSI in place of fighting him, which I thought was a super disrespectful offer from KSI's team to be like, yeah, bro, you're not going to get that main event that you were promised, and you're not going to be in front of a sold-out arena in Ireland, but you can come in the gym and spar us for free. Anyway, Anthony Taylor, big-time win. Then we get to the main event. Josh Brueckner versus FaZe Temperr. And yeah, man, listen, I didn't do a prediction for this fight, but in my head, I kind of knew what was going to happen. And I think a lot of people that watch influencer boxing and kind of had seen what was the writing on the wall here, unfortunately, for Tommy, aka FaZe Temperr. But Josh Brueckner comes out in this fight. And honestly, there were spots where FaZe Temperr Tommy could have taken advantage here, right? I'm going to call him Tommy for the rest of the video because that's how I know him. That's my guy, Tommy. There were spots he could have taken advantage of Josh Brueckner's just forward kind of blitz-style volume punching, right? Jab, and then behind the jab, running forward, right hand into range, and then there's a big collision, right, between the two. Clinch and then release. And there was a lot of that from Josh, which he's done for a good majority of his career, right? He's with BJ Flores now, and I did see some improvements in Josh's boxing game because of BJ Flores. I think BJ's a great coach, especially for developing talent that is there, and Josh has a lot of it. But in this fight, you know, Temperr he had some moments, again, that he had in the KSI fight and that he had in other fights where he's got a decent amount of head movement and he's got some good, like, range keeping with his lead hand, but it's just that moment of pulling the trigger when the pressure does come and you're able to throw in between and land punches and then pivot out and then reset the action. Those were the things that Temperr was missing. I mean, to be honest, they were part of the things that Tommy was missing. The biggest thing for Tommy throughout his influencer boxing career. It's a tough habit to break, and again, sometimes in the heat of the moment, in the battle, the fire, you're going to revert to your instincts. It is his chin straight up in the air and his head back. Anytime there's an exchange of sorts, or we're either leaving the clinch or we're in the phone booth and we're trading shots, Tommy's usually the highest guy there, and he's kind of throwing his shots and looking for a stoppage or looking to land his stuff there. Where I think Tommy, you know, because of his size, he's tall like I am, he's probably even got a longer reach than I do, but he should be a straight puncher. He should be on the outside tagging you with the jab. And then when you do blitz, bow, that left hand comes out. And if he misses it, cool, we clinch, we reset, and we get back to our jab. But Tommy has very much showed that he's a little bit more of a loopy shot fighter, and he'll trade with you in the clinch, again, exiting that, or just in the pocket. And as this fight went on, you saw a couple of those exchanges, and to the point where Josh Brueckner started to win those exchanges, and he started to catch Temperr with things, and it wasn't necessarily hurting him as bad as you'd seen Temperr hurt in the past, but he was getting closer, and you could almost anticipate that there was going to be a moment where in those exchanges, Brueckner was going to clip Temperr on the chin, and that's exactly what happened. And I know a lot of people are looking at this fight, and they're talking about the controversy of an elbow that struck Temperr on the first knockdown, right? There was a first knockdown, I think it was like right at the end of the second round or somewhere close, like maybe 45 seconds left in the second round. All right, so here is the footage of the shot, right? Here comes Brueckner. They're in the clinch. Tommy's trying to throw his high guard. Brueckner's doing a good job of trying to rake the hands down. Tommy comes over the top with a hook. Josh sees it. Now, okay, here is the exchange. We have a frame from the lead hand of Brueckner, right? Trying to get some separation, which again, you know, dirty boxing. We're in the phone booth here, so these things happen. Tommy does not see, because Tommy's trying to, I think, clinch and actually pulls himself into this hook, right? Because he doesn't see over the top of it the frame, and then it's almost like a frame here, and then it's the hook behind it. And Tommy's right arm, if you'll look here, he's actually pulling himself into this hook. So he kind of pulls himself in, and on first watch, when you just kind of go like this, you're like, oh my God, an elbow. The elbow knocked him out. And again, yes, the elbow made contact, but when we do watch the footage back here, you see a glove go right across the chin of Tommy, and then the elbow lands on his neck area, potentially the jaw. The hard part about ruling this as anything other than a clean knockdown is the fact that this is unable to be determined what actually knocked him down. And because the punch lands and then the elbow flows behind it, this is actually not an illegal punch. It is an old trick of the trade in boxing. Not again that Josh did this purposely. He did not. This is completely unintentional. But when you are in the clinch, I have heard many boxing coaches for years and years and years talk about this, not tell a fighter to do it, but hey, it's there and it's available sometimes. If you want to turn that hook over when you're throwing it and just so happen to rip that hook through as you come through, and make sure that if you don't hit with one thing, you hit with another, if you know what I'm saying. So it's very tough to know what actually caused him to hit the ground. But the thing that you can say, at least in my opinion, is that that's a legal punch. Again, I don't want to be saying a lot of this because I do like Tommy, right? I like the guy. That's my dude. But I just got to call a spade here. I at least to my understanding, that would be a legal punch. I could be wrong, and maybe someone will show me that in this appeal, and if the appeal does go through and it's deemed to be an illegal punch, then okay, fair is fair. But to me, when I watch that, that's a legal left-handed shot from Josh Brueckner that happens to have landed the elbow behind it. Tommy, fair play to him, got back to his feet. He was able to recover to some degree, but he was definitely still wobbled, definitely still hurt. And because of that, Brueckner followed up, knocked him down again, and the referee waved it off. TKO stoppage, second round for Josh Brueckner. Big time win for him. I think he needed that, right? A lot of the confidence that, is zapped from you from being knocked out the way he was in the Salt Poppy fight, coming back, doing that. That was a big time win for him. And again, he's in a tournament, like the Misfits Cruiserweight tournament. And with that being said, my guy Le'Veon Bell came in the ring afterward, and they had a little back and forth. That's the most intriguing matchup I think you can make in the tournament. I don't exactly know how it's brackets and seeding and stuff. I don't know who's supposed to fight who, but that's the fight I want to see. And I don't know, again, if they need to take a couple more, if they're in the semis now, whoever. That, to me, is the finals. I think those are the two most talented guys in the tournament. I think it's a fun fight. I think it's hopefully what happens, and where they put that, if it's a main event, if it's not, regardless, I will be tuning in because I want to see that. So that's how Misfits 16 ended, and just quick thoughts on the card. Listen, this is a very slow period in influencer boxing. I think we can all agree that this is not the heydays of the 2020s and the 2022s and any of that time frame. It's just not. So if you're Misfits, you have to go back to the drawing board and say, what are our goals here? Like, what do we want to do with Misfits? Do we want to recreate influencer boxing to what it was? Because to me, that's impossible to do. You don't have the same level of names. You don't have the same level of star power. And it's hard to build star power strictly through influencer boxing. Influencer boxing was built by influencers that already had a following, that already had built themselves into something else completely, that put it all on the line in the boxing ring. And I really mean put it all on the line. There were stakes involved. There was reputation, all that stuff. You can't really recreate that. So what is it that Misfits wants to do? I had seen where Mams Taylor said KSI is going to come back on board and be more involved with the matchmaking and the booking and certain things. And okay, I mean, that's probably a start, right? Depending on the relationships he has and bringing people into the fold. And he's going to have a performance on Misfits 17, a concert style thing. So maybe that'll drum up some new creative ideas. Regardless, for Misfits 16, it wasn't the best card they've put on. And I think they know that. It definitely wasn't the worst because the main event actually went on and you didn't have a guy that didn't show up and cost everybody the main event essentially. But again, in the United States, they're really going to struggle until they find a United States influencer or a couple of them that are going to be able to sell tickets and draw interest. Right now, they just haven't done that. So this wasn't going to ever be a big card. And in fact, it felt like one of their smaller ones, but it definitely wasn't their worst. But there it is, man. That's my Misfits 16 review and breakdown. You guys let me know in the comments what you thought about this card. Where does influencer boxing go from here? That's such an important question that we just don't have the answer for. I don't have the answer for. I don't know if Misfits does, but they have another card in about 20 days from now on August 31st. It's a big time card for them in Ireland. I think it's main evented by Danny Aarons now. You got Dean the Great on that card. You got KSI performing, going to push a lot of stuff behind that. How does that card go? Where is the hype for that card? Who is going to be the big difference maker? And what happens next? I don't have those answers, but I guess we'll find out.